What I find lacking in a lot of parenting and anger things is we don't go back to like kind of the beginnings of everything. So I want to fill you in on the story of you, according to me. Understanding some basic foundational things is one of the quickest ways that we're going to be able to focus in on some ways to change. So let me give you this background, and we're going to move forward from here. So here's the story of you. That's your mom. And your mom had certain traits and characteristics, so much so that she attracted your dad, who had his traits and characteristics. And they got together, made a family, and had you. And you came into the world with a little bit of everybody's traits and characteristics. You had a little bit of mom, you have a little bit of dad's DNA, and you kind of have your own little spark. Could have been from your 5 times great grandma, who knows? Nobody understands it, it's just kind of part of who you are. In the parenting world, there's something called nature and nurture. I'm going to collide it with you because you grew up in a house. So first of all, you have certain DNA. That is your nature. That's kind of who you are because of the genes you have. Then you had home life. The things that you guys did for traditions and families, what your day in and day out was like, who your dad was to you, who your mom was to you, all of these things helped to nurture who you are, okay? So you have these 2 huge forces creating you. There's a big debate that I want you to kind of just know that I'm aware of on, is it more nature is important or more nurture is important? If you believe more nature is important, then you feel like you can't change much with somebody, they are who they are. And if you feel nurture is more important, then you're always going to be trying to changing and controlling because you think you have all this say. I want you to know, for the purpose of this course, we are landing on a 50-50 split because I don't really know, but I have seen and believe it's both. I have seen ways that how kids are nurtured just explodes and brings out their DNA, and it's totally, I can see it in their mom or their dad. And I've seen ways that nurture completely shuts down a DNA. So I think everything's an interplay, and for this course I want to just address that. Here you are in the world, and part of your growing up has been some amazing and beautiful things. You know, your parents were great on some levels. They loved you, they took care of you, they fed you, and they also taught you how to relate to people, positive and negative. In some ways you got shut down, and in other ways you got encouraged. I really want to acknowledge that there's this whole powerful thing that happens when you were growing up. And then zero in on, sometimes wounds have happened to us. So wounds in my language include, we didn't feel heard, or we didn't feel like we were good enough, or we felt like we always tried but nobody ever told us how great we were, or they always told us how great we were and we didn't know how to believe them because we always felt like we were missing something. And these are wounds that we kind of carry. They kind of make jagged edges in our souls and in our hearts, and we kind of carry those. And these are kind of holes and entry points to where other people are going to bother us, they're going to hurt us, they're going to engage with us in some ways that we're going to take a certain way because of these wounds. So we will talk about these later, and I'm not going to, in the next few videos, just for time's sake, I'm not going to include all these, but I want you to know that the wounds are there. And when I show you the next piece where your mate, he's also going to have wounds that I'm going to not include, and then your child ultimately will all have wounds too. I'm including this piece on wounds because it's significant and important to acknowledge we didn't wound ourselves. These are things that happened to us as we grew up because of our parents. As I've said to my folks, as we've sorted ourselves out over the years, they didn't have Oprah, they didn't have self-help, they didn't have a lot of the knowledge that we have today. So wounds have happened, and even with all our knowledge, we still wound our kids. But I just wanted to acknowledge this because we're going to be having to use wounds later on to discuss it.